Anytime.
I really appreciate it. First question. Tell me about yourself.
Well, my name's Lily Craig, and I'm 32 years old, and I'm Muslim, and I'm an advocate for the prevention of climate change.
Cool. How much do you know about climate change?
I know that it's real, and I know that we have a huge impact on it, and that we're one of the only species to cause it. So.
Do you believe climate change is a real problem or a hoax?
It's 100% a real problem.
Okay. Have you ever met a person who believes it's a hoax/fake?
Yes. Yeah, I have.
Can you tell me more about the, how do you feel about a person because of this?
I mean, I think that they have been fed a false narrative, and I think that they're either willfully ignorant or, willfully blind to very obvious things that are happening in the world.
To your knowledge about climate change, what do you think causes climate change?
I think there's a ton of factors. I think everything from, fossil fuels, CO2 emissions, the excessive amount of plastic that we leave in the environment, the destroying of our natural forests and our natural air cleaners, essentially, our trees. And I think the lack of appropriate disposal of certain chemicals and the covering up or lack of concern for things like oil spills, etc.
Okay. Have you ever been personally affected by climate change?
I think everybody is being personally affected by it all the time. I mean, from the extreme weather changes that we have, the heat, the crazy summers. Just this one we had a couple of years ago, the summer was so hot, we had to shut down the work. So, yeah, definitely.
Okay. Have you noticed any changes in the weather in your area over the years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Definitely.
How do you think climate change is affecting our planet, like our ecosystem or even our society?
Yeah, I think that our ecosystems are shrinking. I think that it's causing migrations of certain animals to areas that they would otherwise not be in, like polar bears, for example. I think that it's raising the temperatures with the greenhouse effect tremendously. I mean, you can see that in the weather patterns that are changing. And I think that if it doesn't stop, it's gonna speed up exponentially.
What do you think can be done to reduce the impact of it?
Education, for one thing. I think a lot of this comes from a lack of education and a lack of resources given with that education on what to do and how to make certain changes, lifestyle changes on an individual level. But more so, I think it comes down to a lot of these big major companies and what they're doing, because a lot of the impact comes from them. Plastics, oil companies, things like that they need to change.
Cool. How can we encourage more people to take action about this topic?
Again, back to the education, and the proof is in the pudding. Continuously showcasing what is already happening, like for example, the coral reefs bleaching, the warmer waters, showing the damage that's already been done and that continues to be done, and lining that up with the numbers and the facts and the statistics, and yeah, continued education.
Cool. What do you think governments and corporations have a responsibility to navigate climate change?
They definitely have a responsibility. I mean, their voice is, has a massive impact on what companies will do, and they're kind of holding the reins with a lot of that. The more vocal they are, the more pressure it will put on companies to make the changes that are necessary.
What changes can we, as people, make in our daily lives to reduce?
Small things, everything from recycling, trying to recycle as responsibly as possible, looking at our energy footprint that we leave, from lights being left on, for example, right now, and what we're doing with our trash, what we're doing with, other things like that, just being responsible.
Do you, I know that the Delhi has been more strict about how we throw away our stuff. Are you somewhat implementing that into your household, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for the most part we could definitely do better. I try to keep an eye on, recycling as much as possible, rinsing things out as much as possible, and, not mingling too much like food material and with recycling or even just the trash, because that makes it harder whenever it goes to the landfill. So yeah.
What role do you think renewable energy sources can play in addressing?
I mean, renewable energy is, a huge factor. I mean, it would replace things like, the fossil fuels. It would replace the need for deforestation, and it would be a more efficient way of supplying energy to people. It would just kind of eventually scrub things out from the bottom to the top, from our air to the environment itself. It just has to be implemented.
What biggest renewable energy are you thinking about?
That, I think our most accessible renewable energy source is solar energy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think there are huge steps that are being taken in wind energy as well. They're making wind energy a lot easier to harness.
Yeah.
And so wind and solar.
How does climate change impact vulnerable communities and ecosystems?
I mean, for vulnerable communities, you have to look at, for example, the flooding in Pakistan. That was a massive floods running through these communities that are very tightly packed, these communities that don't have the option to just up and move or locate in these quote unquote more desirable places. So in that way, it's tragedy waiting to happen. And as far as ecosystems go, you don't have to look any further than the rainforest and the amount of species that are going extinct. The estimate is there's several hundred species going extinct all the time just because of deforestation in the rainforest.
What do you think the world will look like in 50 years if we don't take action against it?
Very dull, very dim, very brown. I think that it will, I don't think it's going to look like Mars or anything in just 50 years, but I do think if we don't make some major changes, a lot of places are going to start to look like wastelands, unfortunately.
I know it's already happening in the river of India.
Yeah.
In some parts of China.
Yeah. areas are drying up or completely being flooded away. It's just shifting everything.
What measures do you believe should be taken to navigate climate change?
All kinds of measures. I think that there needs to be a mutual understanding among world leaders. I think that it steps in renewable energy, clean energy, they need to be taken seriously. And I think that some countries are taking a lead in this, for better or for worse. I think that places, in like Saudi Arabia, they have huge plans for like greener cities and greener energy. China's actually one of the big leaders in it right now, even though they were one of the biggest contributors for the longest time. But yeah, I think just communication among world leaders is very important.
Cool. Who do you think should be responsible for addressing climate change, like the governments, businesses, or even individuals?
All of the above.
Cool.
All of the above.
What role do you think international corporations play in addressing climate change?
I mean, corporations, they have us all by the neck, essentially. Those corporations, I think, either have to start tilting towards green energy or they're eventually going to go under because, they're already one of the big causes, local or global. They're one of the big causes of climate change with how they get their resources and, sell their products, etc.
Do you think the current policies and agreements are effective in combating climate change?
Not effective enough. I think that more communication needs to be happening, more urgency needs to be happening.
How do you what do you think is the what do you think is the most important step that needs to be taken to address climate change on a global scale?
I think that goes back to communication and education, with a sense of urgency. The fossil fuels need to be cut. If you want to, in a perfect world, fossil fuels need to be stopped. I think green energy needs to be implemented globally, quickly, as much as possible, to the countries that have the resources to do it. And the countries that have the money need to be aiding the countries that don't have the money to start utilizing this green energy and bringing that technology to those other countries.
Cool. And the last question, how do you think climate change will affect future generations?
It depends on, what we do now. I am concerned for the next 50 years for kids that are being born now. If we don't do something, they have a lot of weight to carry.
Yeah.
They could live in a very, very scary world because with how quickly climate change is happening now, it's going to be so much faster. They're going to be witnessing global atrocities from climate change on a much more frequent scale, and that's scary.
Okay.
And I hope that doesn't happen.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say about it, or?
Just people should educate themselves and not be afraid of the reality and the truth. Don't just put your head in the sand.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yay, we're done.
Yay.